The next day his father gave him the divine manual of heaven, and Hyun had a serious face, because this was the manual that the emperor had granted. Clearly, his father was influential enough to get something like this. His father just said that he had recently mentioned to the emperor that his son had started practicing martial arts. So the emperor personally chose the best martial arts manual from the palace for him. Ha ha ha. Little did Hyun know what his father was capable of to get this. The old man sent letters every day to the emperor asking if the man had forgotten about him. He did all this just to win the emperor's heart by blackmailing. This seemed like a lover's tantrum, didn't it? On top of all this, his brother-in-law became his instructor and would personally teach him martial arts. His name was Dam Chunwoo, his older sister's husband. He even boasted that his martial arts school was the most famous in this province. Probably, this guy must be an apprentice compared to Hyun's true strength, but he couldn't show his true strength now, so he had to kneel and accept his brother-in-law as his master. His father was so moved, his eyes looked like a waterfall. How did his son become so polite as to spend so much time kneeling? But that was simply because he couldn't get up and needed his brother-in-law's help. In the following days, he followed his brother-in-law's training, but all this seemed like torture. The man would insult him and even called him a killer whale. Haya became furious and even dared to challenge his master, saying that he would prove that he already knows the basic principles of the technique. He thought it was just a joke, and he started laughing very loudly. But when Hyun ridiculed him asking if he was scared, he immediately agreed to the duel, and then sealed his internal energy to balance the battle. He still felt it wasn't enough, so he tied his own arms before the fight. Hyun activated his combat technique. This seemed strong and fast enough, but still slow due to the fat body. His brother-in-law was also surprised. How could he combine fighting techniques so naturally? Hyun's power had limits, so he had to win quickly. He easily knocked down his brother-in-law, who was now begging for mercy, but still got knocked out. Sometime later, he was so hurt that he couldn't even scratch himself. When he asked his wife and Hyun's sister to scratch his head for him, she was happy because Hyun was doing so well. She always thought Hyun was a martial genius. His sister couldn't contain her happiness. On another day, Hyun was just walking down the street. He had never seen people so happy before. There were merchants and also children playing everywhere, so he remembered the past where dead bodies were scattered everywhere. Everyone had to live with hunger and fear. The chaos servant destroyed everything he passed by and took away everyone's peace. But now when they saw Hyun, they ran to him full of admiration. Could the young master really be walking on his own legs? Everyone was completely amazed and soon gave him many gifts, even delicious food. He was just walking, but the citizens made him heavier and heavier. Their kindness was so great that he couldn't find a way to refuse. But he was more determined than ever to save this martial world. These good people here didn't deserve to die like this. At that moment, he realized that a martial arts master was watching him. The hidden martial master noticed that the fat man was looking back at him, but soon thought he was exaggerating. How could a fat man who did nothing notice him? But Hyun suddenly appeared behind the man wanting to talk. With the sudden scare, the man attacked with all his strength. Hyun flying off despite weighing tons. The man's strength was uncommon. Hyun fell unconscious from the impact force. Meanwhile, the man took advantage to flee. When he woke up, Hyun was furious, wanting to kill the man who hit him. The people around wanted to know if he was hurt, but he pretended not to care, only it was obvious that it hurt a lot. With this, he was even more determined to train to become more powerful. Meanwhile, his father and sister were discussing together. He wanted to propose a marriage so that Hyun would become a famous general, but it was too early. His son's change was certainly related to breaking off the engagement with Namgung's daughter, a girl who didn't want to marry since childhood, and wanted to forge her own path in martial arts. Hyun's father wanted to ask for the girl's hand again as soon as possible. The men from Namgung were already nearby. They were still thinking of a fair way to refuse young Hyun. Meanwhile, Hyun was heading to the martial beggars area to gather information about the virgin ginseng, but he searched for a long time and found nothing. A man explains that it's been over 20 years since the beggars disappeared from the area after the patriarch built houses for them. He also wanted to gather information about the state treasure. Who would know where the beggar would be living now? At the same time, Namgung's lord was in the provincial government area to investigate the records of Hyun on which a marriage proposal was made. The beggar says that Hyun is a special adoptive son, so he couldn't do business until he receives permission from the central beggar office. That's because the office classified Hyun as celestial level because he's the patriarch's son. Since the opponent was someone wealthy and powerful, Namgung immediately threw a stack of coins saying he would pay any price, but it still wasn't enough. That's because they can't override the beggar matrix order. Then he withdrew his ring which was the Emperor's seal. Whoever possessed this treasure would receive protection from the Namgung family. This was a treasure of inestimable value. At the same time, Hyun also arrived at the beggars area. But this gang was too fancy to be called beggars. One of the guards outside even called him fat, telling him to leave because there was an important person here. But he didn't care and tried to enter directly since he was the patriarch's son. But he was hit by the guard in the face, and he was insulted. Hyun was really angry and ready to repay the humiliation the guard made him go through, but he'll repay in a punch this time. After Namgung gave his ring to the beggar, the beggar finally passed the information to the man about Hyun. He was about to read it until suddenly a commotion started outside. Hyun was fighting against that guard. He had to admit that he underestimated the fat man. How could he move so fast, even weighing hundreds of kilos? Hyun says he was using an infinite sky sword, but with his lower level ability, he couldn't do anything. Hyun just needed an apology, and he would forgive him, but the guy got even more irritated after Hyun insulted the Namgung clan. When Namgung's guard drew his sword to threaten him, Hyun defeated him instantly. All he heard was the guard's cry of pain from Namgung. Even so, Hyun raised the man again, saying he would educate him properly, began slapping the guard's face, until someone shouted from the sky to stop him. This person quickly landed among them. Hyun backed away, but the man didn't intend to let him escape. Hyun immediately realized that the man was a practitioner of a brutal martial art, so he had to stop him first. With the fat body, he couldn't directly confront the brutal style. The brutal style was a martial art that increased energy burst using rotation. Hyun wanted to use the opposite rotation to reverse it, but he realized that the one in front of him now was his master and lost focus. This man was the sword master who taught him in his past life. Therefore, Hyun was familiar with these movements, but the end result was still being beaten. He thought the fat man wasn't someone so common, as he managed to disperse the power of the explosive lightning mystic fist. Hyun was trying to get up, his eyes gleaming with killing intent. The man noticed this and started to move towards him, but the subordinates approached to protect him, and he ended up unconscious. This was ridiculous. The chief of the beggars division coming out of the building finally realized that the fat man in front of him was the patriarch's adoptive son, so he rushed to help, shouting, "Who dares to harm the chief's son like this?" People immediately looked at young Namgung with hatred, who seemed powerless. He looked at his father. At that moment, he understood everything and tore up Hyun's information book. It was now useless, and he would have to face his father's wrath. If Namgung wasn't Hyun's future son-in-law, he would have been punished. The chief of the beggar gang division also knelt down to apologize, and things were escalating catastrophically. Then the beggar also conveyed to Namgung that he should kneel and apologize, as the man in front of him was respected even by an emperor. Seeing this, Namgung immediately feared and knelt to beg for mercy. But the father's anger was about to explode. Who dared to harm his favorite son? He would surely pay with his life. At that moment, Hyun walked out the door, but his appearance was a bit strange. It seems his sister forced him to do this hairstyle to look more handsome. The chief of the beggars division saw Hyun walking completely fine even after a punch from Namgung's son. Hyun went directly to meet the Namgung family head, greeting him, also telling Namgung's son that he himself was his uncle. Although he was only 17 years old, Hyun had been waiting for this day for a long time. That's because this guy was his master in his past life and slapped him several times. Although it hurt a lot, there was nothing Hyun could do at that time. He knew that in the future this man would become the Sword King, one of the 6 saints of the main sect. Now Hyun finally had the chance to get revenge by pinching his cheek and making the guy call him uncle. But of course, he was very happy to see this person. He was so happy that he started crying, thinking he could now take revenge.
Why you bully me?
After that, everyone sat down to discuss, while Namgung still didn't know how to refuse the marriage contract. It was then that Hyun calmly refused this marriage, saying that he was busy training to save the world. The timing was not right for marriage. He even complained about the marriage contract being imposed by the previous promise without the consent of both parties. He knew that the time for marriage had not yet come. However, upon hearing this, the father was shocked. The martial arts world was full of bandits, thieves on the corners, mercenaries committing crimes, and he was clearly referring to Namgung and the beggar. They had to relent and remain silent. No one disagreed, so he got up and started to leave, saying that they considered the matter of marriage closed since both agreed. At that moment, he called the chief of the beggar gang, saying they would have to have a little chat. He wanted to get information about the virgin ginseng, know about the current state of martial arts, and the ancient masters of his lineage. He wanted revenge for what they did. He would make them go through everything he went through in his past life, and it would surely come at a price. His eyes became malicious when he realized realized it was time to accept a disciple. Then we returned to the pool. His vassal was asking him to return and rest in his room, but Hyun didn't seem to care much, until his beautiful sister along with her vassal arrived at the scene telling him to rest. Hyun's guard, seeing the wooden woman with his sister, became completely infatuated. The woman looks like a two-legged tractor. His sister, knowing that he intends to go to the murim, asks if he forgot what happened to their mother. He knows she died because she had unfinished business in the murim. Hyun just asks if she thinks he appears to be someone untrustworthy and weak like that. This caught her off guard. He asserted that nothing bad would happen again to their clan because he wouldn't allow it. His sister was very happy about this, saying he's no longer a child. With a wide smile on her face, she caressed our young fat master, saying he has grown quite a bit. Grown quite a bit sideways perhaps. Why was his lovely sister being so friendly with him? This was all very strange. Or was this what family should mean? After that, quite some time passed. The pool water stirred. As someone jumped from inside to outside, this person said that the time had finally come. The vassal rushed, asking his master to be careful. Will we finally see Hyun's transformation? Our protagonist turned into the flabby man.
Look at this dude. No.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Leave a like if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. See you in the next video. Bye for now.